Pulse Secure VPN 0 day that came out. What we have from Bleeping Computer is a report that this VPN 0 day has been actively exploited in defense firms and government organizations in both the United States and Europe. There's no specifics to which exact agencies are affected, but it's one of those pick one, right?
Hmm.
Pulse VPN is pretty popular. I've seen it in my time working in the DoD, so yeah, it's prevalent enough to be of concern. Let's put it that way, right? So this CVE is dangerous. It's a 10 out of 10 severity score. It's a group, really, of vulnerabilities that really give you complete control over a Pulse Secure VPN gateway. So now it's biggest thing here is they've patched this. There's also a workaround for it. So if you have Pulse Secure VPN and you haven't updated recently, please do so because this is a very serious threat. It's coming from Chinese backed state hackers, so UNC 2630, 2717, and potentially APT5 as identified by FireEye. Um, those don't mean anything to me off the top of my head, but I know those are. I've seen them. I'm pretty sure I've seen 2630 on one of our previous breach reports too. So these are APTs who've been around, made a name for themselves, been making noise.
Well, it's interesting. We've talked about it, and maybe this is just the trend. Um, Security software being exploited as a point of entry
The
into these other
SolarWinds.
organizations.
Yeah.
Exactly. SolarWinds is a good one. Um, and I don't know, like, how many more stories like this need to come out before people are like, okay, well, maybe I should do a full audit of everything that's connected to my systems. Maybe I should understand from that audit what these vendors are doing to secure their own environments and what level of access do they have into our environments and what are we allowing them, because a lot of the cases, you go through like a vendor selection process. You get the vendor, and it's usually an afterthought to say, well, wait a minute, how your API just connects? Like, hold on a minute, how does it connect? What is it doing? What methodology is it? Encrypted traffic? How where is that data stored? Who owns that data? Is that data compliant? Like, those are the types of things to think about when looking at attacks like this.
Hey man, you got yourself a new career. I'll tell you what. That kind of stuff right there is what I was asking when working as doing third party vendor assessments, right? What you're talking about is data flow diagrams, and what I was going to say is if you're worried about this kind of stuff, what you're talking about is kind of the first steps towards zero trust. But I don't really want to talk about zero trust. That's really hard and complicated. Let's talk about something simple anybody can do right now today listening to this video is you go in tomorrow and you begin inventorying and classifying the data in your organization, right? And by classifying, I mean, is this public data where it gets doesn't matter who sees it? Is this financial data? Is this PII? Is this, classified as something like HIPAA, PCI? Is this IP, right? Like in terms of Apple's case, is this something we, the company, have built ourselves, our crown jewels, whatever it is, that which we design? Understanding the classification of this data. Very first step, right? Once you do that, very next thing to do is the data flow and build diagrams. Make visual drawings if you have to. Draw it on sticky notes or on a. I used to do it on a whiteboard, right? We were doing this to inventory and try to figure out where is our proprietary data going. I want to know every system that this thing touches and is stored on, right? So you build your data flow diagram, and what that does is allows you to visualize where you need to apply your security. If you've got extremely important stuff going across most of your network, you need to consider cutting that down, isolating it, separating it, right? This way, if your VPN that your typical everyday worker uses to sign in is compromised, it's not hooked up to the exact same systems which
Mm-hmm.
your blueprint development department is on, right? Um, I mean, that's ultimately the idea of zero trust in the end is trust nobody and only allow access for those who need it. But it has to start with what is the data classification and where is it going? Um, so if you're a victim of this false VPN 0-day exploit, and if you haven't done that exercise, chances are you've got all kinds of important data going through a now compromised VPN gateway. And you could have implemented a separate VPN for that data. You could have said no VPNs, right? Zero work. Keep it stored only on a database, whatever it is. Um, so VPNs. I mean, everybody knows this, right? Those are important. Everybody's getting a VPN these days. Those are very popular. Even the at-home users using them um, because it's meant to be your security tunnel, right? And so with
Mm-hmm.
that being compromised, it's pretty major. That's a huge breach.
Yeah, and there was maybe it's popular for VPNs to get targeted as well, just because of their reach. NordVPN was hit, and then there was another
Hmm.
popular one as well. I can't remember off the top of my head, but
Yeah, I can't think of it either.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember the Nord one. That was a few years back now. So here's the advisory they've released related to this. So SA 44784, an out of cycle advisory, meaning we weren't expecting this. So they have a KB that refers to it. There's four CVEs: 2021-2289349 and oh 893, 894, 899, and 900. These are super serious. So they allow multiple use after free, buffer overflows, command injection, and multiple unrestricted uploads. So what this is saying is you can inject commands, upload anything that you want through the gateway, and using buffer overflows and use after freeze, you can queue up and spill over commands potentially into other devices and anything that's on the wire through the gateway. So I mean that's complete control. Uh, you're able to do effectively whatever you want. You could sit there and man in the middle everyone on the network. You can alter DNS routes. You could send people to malicious servers. You could, you know, attach scripts, external scripts, whatever you want. Really, that's extremely serious.
Mm-hmm.
10 out of
Yeah.
10. Yeah. Um, so there are updates available and in all these KBs you can go there. So check out your Pulse. You need to today. And if you're interested in testing it out and just to kind of show that this is already, you know, this can already be compromised very easily, you can go on GitHub and check out Zephyrfish. That's Zephyrfish's GitHub, and they have CVE 2021-22893. It's a proof of concept attack for this. This one's kind of funny. What actually ends up happening is when you run it, it plays Rick Astley's "Never Gonna Give You Up." Well, it types it in
Rolls.
the
Oh
the,
yeah, as the
echo,
execution. Gotcha.
right? Yeah, it just
Yeah.
echoes out messages to you, so it's pretty funny. Now, if you're not careful with it too, uh, you can don't screw up. You see that? That's a very powerful command right there. Don't delete your stuff. But this one I downloaded. I'm gonna play around with it. It's pretty interesting, but I do need to get a Pulse VPN set up in my lab. Uh, Very serious. I'm expecting to see some more news coming out of the.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask about that. What do you think? What are your thoughts about this down the road? Because I know when we tracked the Excellion breach, we kind of started to see some patterns emerge.
Took the
Um,
words right out of my mouth. I was gonna say, I was thinking this would track similar to Excellion and SolarWinds. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Maybe not quite as catastrophic. I don't know. Pulse is popular, man. A lot of big companies have it, and again, it is also affecting governments in the US and Europe. So it's a supply chain attack. Again, it's the same
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, it's one of the things we've outlined in our trends report. And I think also I think there was something in the news today actually that talked about Biden um, is getting ready to roll out his executive plan for cybersecurity.
Aha, yes.
So my guess will be probably getting back on track with CMC, probably getting a little bit more strict on enforcing these guidelines and really just trying to tighten the loop on these supply chain attacks. I think that's going to be big focus of the administration, a big focus of anyone that does any business with the DoD, with the government in general. To be frank, if you're not doing your due diligence on your vendors, then you're not doing business with the government. And you know, we've said this before, but it has a trickle down effect where um, you're going to force people to comply and it's going to cost money and that
Hmm.
kind of sucks. But in essence, you're also helping to better secure everyone. So,
The
eh,
economic implications are very interesting. On both sides of it is it's it's going to be expensive for everyone to protect themselves properly, but it's also really expensive not to.
yeah.
It sucks, really. I mean, to have to make that decision, think about that. It's like it's do we definitely spend money? Do we possibly lose even more money? And it sounds. I mean, it sounds a little dramatic, but I mean, it really is. It can be that bad. I mean, we've seen companies, even in our breach report, who have suffered millions of dollars of damage, who can't manufacture, who can't do business, and those
Hmm.
who, like SolarWinds, have and will continue to lose business based on the damage done to that brand because they were hacked.
Yeah.
Um, but what? I think there's far-reaching implications. Maybe let's chat about that real quick. I know we're
Sure.
pretty much about to wrap up, but I'm just kind of thinking about in the future. We talked about big cybersecurity budgets, but it's true. We're going to get bigger budgets. There's going to also have to be more more budgeting for auditing and for compliance and for all the different aspects of it in addition to the software. And then there's the people, and the people have to be paid appropriately to keep on top of this, to understand how to use it. There's so many different cybersecurity jobs today. It's I can remember, and you can remember when really when things got booming, and then when cybersecurity first became a thing, it was very few jobs, and nowadays there's just an abundance of different types of cybersecurity jobs, right? Threat hunters and researchers and analysts and people who do everything, pen
Hmm.
testers, right? So I mean, how big does this chunk of the economy need to grow to really be steadfast against the growing threat? Because I
Well,
think right now it's we're a
here's
little
the
bit
thing.
on the losing
Here's
side.
the thing. Here's the thing. One, it's almost all of it is technology driven. Almost
Right.
all of it. And technology moves at the speed of light. And these organizations, they need to take time to budget things out, to roll things out, to actually invest in all of these things, which they are. And the reason why I know they are is there's a trend report somewhere floating around that said somewhere around 10% was the increase in cybersecurity investment that was planned for this year. On top of in 2020, there was already an increase in technology in general with work from home culture. So it kind of trickled down. And to get to your point about what are the implications, I've been saying this for probably about 2 years now. It's going to be a normal cost of doing business. People are going to start evaluating their vendors, their partnerships, and they're going to be saying, okay, well, you know, what data do you have access to of ours? How are you sending and receiving that information? What's your API connection setup look like? How is that data? What level of access, like we were talking about before?
Right.
And if you don't meet some level of, I don't know if it's a checklist or, vendor assessment or typically
Compliance of some form, yeah.
compliance, yeah, which that you talked about cost, right? And these positions where CISO is becoming more and more of a top level figure in organizations, where compliance, that's a whole different realm of security outside of doing the assessments, outside of doing the implementation of the work and maintaining the program, depending on how large you are. So, yeah, broad
Giant industry.
broad strokes, my feeling is the industry is only going to continue to grow.
Mhm.
Investments have to continue to, because if you want to do business in this day and age, you have to be online. And if you are online in any fashion, you are
You have to be
susceptible
secure.
to an attack. Yeah. You
You
are.
know, and you mentioned something, and I'm kind of curious. I don't know if you know this, but let's say a 10%, right? 10% investment, 10% increase in your budget towards cybersecurity was something that they projected, right? For let's say for 2021, but we've seen cybercrime go up over 600%.
Hmm.
So how does a 10% budgetary increase compare against a 600% increase in cybercrime, right? Like, because it's not a one-to-one. I know that because the tools on the blue team side could be extremely effective against the red team. So um, maybe spending less can do more, but I'm wondering, what is that ratio, right? Like, I don't think a 10% budgetary increase was enough this year. I mean, look at everybody who got hacked. And I know that's kind
Yeah.
of an arbitrary number, but just for example, that's the kind of stuff I'm thinking about. So, I mean, if you have to double your cybersecurity or IT security workforce,
I think
that's
it's less. I think that the spend is less relevant in how you actually apply the spend.
yeah,
And I think there's two ways to kind of look at it. The first way is, unfortunately, the way that people go, and it's the wrong way, is let's invest in all this technology and spend the money, and there we go, we check the box,
right.
right?
Then
I
there's the purple sec
well,
way.
hold on, hold on, hold on. Yeah, there's the purple way. Yeah, the plug. Um, and then the second bit is, see, I lost my thought when you did
I'm so
that.
sorry.
Um, spend a lot of money on the technology. They hope that it works, and it's inevitably
Right.
going to fail, because we've got the sim tool and we're ingesting all this stuff. But the more proper way is to stop thinking about security as these one-offs of, I got to do an annual risk assessment, or I've got to do my pen test once a quarter, or I got to do. Stop thinking of it as individual components that you have to do, and start thinking about it from a program development perspective
Yep.
of, like any other function of business. You would develop a program around it. You would hire a department head who would then build out, request resources, whether there's some tooling. But I think the biggest deficit are in the trained professionals, and I know for a fact that the deficit, I think by 2030, is going to be somewhere around 3.5 million cybersecurity professionals. But it's not the entry level professionals. It's not the people who can just click a tool and run a tool and report on a tool. It's the senior level people and the executive level people who can actually build and run these programs. That's where the big deficit is, on the compliance side, on the blue team side, on the red team side, on all of these angles. That's where the big deficit is, and that's where I think the greatest risk is.
Yeah, man, I think you really said it all there. Is what I think you're trying to say before I very rudely interrupted you was that where companies make the mistake is that they treat it as a numbers game, right? So they throw more software, more tools, bigger tools, better tools, and maybe sometimes more people, even more bodies at the problem. Whereas what what you really need to do is look at it, as you said, from a program perspective, but it needs to be goals driven, right? And risk driven. So if you have bought all these, big time expensive security tools and you've hired your guys and you've got you've got your sim engineers and all these dudes who have now taken up a large part of your budget, um, and then you still don't have a very effective cybersecurity program because you haven't also done things like done your data flow diagrams, found out what your data classifications are. Simplification is extremely valuable in
Hmm.
security. It's something that always gets overlooked. It's the administrative overhead, and it is a part of the controls. I mean, there's a reason why control sets like CIS tell you to reduce the number of accounts that your administrators have to administer. And
Hmm.
it's not just a it's not just about the access, right? Like one, least amount of access is great, but also those are human beings who have to sit there and take care of that security. And if you make that job hard on them,
Hmm.
they're going to make mistakes. I mean, that's just how
Or they're
that
going to get
happens.
bogged down with
Right.
busy work, and they're not going to be able to spend time thinking about the
Yes.
strategy. And that's the biggest deficit is we have the implementation bit, we have the checkbox checked, for compliance. But what does next year look like? What does year 2, year 3 look like? What are you building towards?
Yeah.
Security doesn't sleep, and just because you're logging things, and you if you're lucky, you have someone who's actually analyzing the logs, but in most case you're just logging, monitoring, and reporting on it. You're not really doing anything else.
Yeah, and I think if you're not actively building towards something, some kind of security program, you're working towards burnout with your
Hmm.
security team because
Oh yeah.
the bad guys are working towards building something. So what's going to happen is eventually you're going to fall behind, and then you're going to have to make one of those decisions of, well, do we hire some more security engineers, or maybe we swap out this WAF for a different WAF or a different SIM, right? And those are
Hmm.
honestly, those are decisions you shouldn't have to be. That's a dumb conversation. That's a waste of time. You already bought the software. You've got the tool, and the tool works. If your program's not working, it's because you need to focus on the process side of your PPT triangle, right? You've got the tools, you've got the people. Make your processes work so that you're staying fresh, staying ahead of things, that you're not burning people out. And sometimes maybe you do just need to hire more people. I mean, I've worked at some places where I was just like, how do you get by with so few IT security people for the like just thousands of people who work here? So,
Sadly, it's just kind of the culture of our time, especially in the IT industry. People just
yeah.
kind of get abused and kind of bogged down. But anyways, I think that this was a great um, breach to kind of end this on. Lots of really great discussions, kind of branching out from that. Josh, as always, thanks for taking the time to dive through and dissect all of these stories. Really do enjoy going through them with you.
Absolutely. Now that we're on number 13, we talked about the future of the show a little bit, and I think we do want to see some cool improvements coming. So maybe we'll wrap this up. We'll call it like a season 1, and we'll come back with some more technology, some more guests, and maybe a better flow to the program itself. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, we have a lot of really good plans in the pipe. Some experts that we want to bring on who can really provide, much more depth to the conversation. We have some people that we're talking in cryptography, some malware researchers, some threat researchers. So
Basically,
all
people who actually know what they're talking about, not just me.
Yeah, yeah, but we want to give a little bit more depth to the conversation and
Yeah,
really pick apart like the Pulse Secure. Like, can we pick that malware apart and really take a look at
get some
or the
demos
vulnerability
going.
rather, and take a look at exactly a demo of it. So yeah, more to come.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. So, well, there's our lucky number 13 we'll sign off with, and we'll return soon with some good stuff.